This episode contains discussion around handling one's personal finances and investing. The information shared in this podcast is for informative and educational purposes only and is not to be taken as financial advice. Remember that any investing or personal finance decisions that you take are your responsibility alone, and it's strongly advisable to do your own research before making any decisions and consult the opinion of a professional where applicable.
Welcome to episode 17 of the Multinational Money Podcast.
Welcome back to the Multinational Money Podcast. I'm Johnny, your host, and if you're interested in financial freedom, expat life, and making the most of global opportunities, then this is your podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Laura Tynan. Laura used to work in the corporate world before quitting her job to create The Witch of Wall Street, which is her project to help create and empower women when it comes to financial freedom. And so in this episode, we're going to look a little bit at Laura's backstory. We're going to look at some of the key lessons that she's learned along the way. And we're also going to look at how she finds life now running her own business compared to when she was working. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, guys. And with that, let's get right into it. Okay. All right. So Laura, welcome to the Multinational Money Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today. I think it's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself to start off, like your background, where you're from, a bit about your professional life as well.
Yeah, so to put some context on it, so originally from Cork, grew up in a very, I suppose, I'm just going to say a gender traditional family, meaning mom stayed at home, dad went to work, which will make sense later why I say that. But I grew up being like, I want to go where the money is. I want to be rich in life. And I always saw my mom kind of arguing with my dad about having money. And I was like, I don't ever want that for me. So I ended up studying finance at university because I was like, that's obviously where you go to make money. And then I became a chartered accountant, and I spent the better part of about a decade working in the corporate finance industry, working in some of the biggest consulting firms in the world. And as I was going through that journey, I also discovered this passion for personal development, personal growth. And that's where this whole unfolding of starting my business really began, because the things I was learning in those trainings, those events, like working with some of the biggest leaders in the world in personal development, began to completely shift my entire reality. And coming from like a small town in Ireland, Cork, like not minuscule, but definitely not big time, I was able to carve this really exciting path for myself within the financial industry. And at the age of only like 25, 26, was working at C-suite level, was having the most incredible experiences. But what it also showed me was that at that level, there's not many women in the financial industry at the senior level. And so as I was going through this journey, building a very successful career, very passionate about self-development, I kind of sparked this passion for how do I change this? How do I get more women in finance, in these spaces, in these conversations that are happening at the more senior level? And so in a nutshell, I guess that was the kind of starting points of my journey. And I know we're going to talk about the Witch of Wall Street, so I'll just hold back for a second before I delve into that next chapter.
Yeah, no, that was nicely summarized. And when you said, I want to be rich, like we're definitely going to hold on to that thought because it's something that I want to come back to later in the interview as well.
Yeah.
One of the questions I was going to ask you was like, what was kind of the turning point for you that made you jump from the corporate world to doing your own thing?
Yeah, so for any of my spiritual listeners, there is something called your Saturn return, which happens around age 30. And it was this really interesting period of my life coming up to another big chapter. As I said, I had built a very successful career for myself, was earning a lot of money, had a lot of prestige and all of the things that I thought I really wanted when I was like 18, 19, going into university to study finance. But I reached a point in my life that I realized my ladder was up against the wrong wall. I was climbing the wrong thing. And there's a really interesting thing when you start to understand manifestation, which I'm totally obsessed with, like how do we create our own reality? When you have a really strong vision of the life you want to create, don't be surprised if your current reality starts to crumble. And I had been going through, these very intense personal development events, working with coaches, and began to craft this new vision of what I wanted my life to look like. I had been coaching women within my industry, teaching them what I had been learning to get ahead. And I started to craft a new vision of what life could be outside of the conformity of working in corporate and kind of following that path that I was brought up to believe was going to be successful. And so as this vision became more and more clear, Johnny, this old reality, my current reality, started to literally crumble. In the sense that I had built this very successful career, and then it seemed like overnight things started to change. I had a new boss, work started becoming really horrendous, like I hated it. And I lasted about 4 weeks in this new dynamic until I was like, I'm done, I quit. I cannot put myself through this. And as it will later kind of all piece together, because I had also been studying, obviously, finance, I had been investing my own money, I had the real privilege of being able to do that, being able to say, this isn't for me anymore, and I'm going to take a break, I'm going to take a pause. And I had my investments working for me, I had my money under control, so I was able to give myself the luxury of doing that and figuring out my next step. And, you know, alongside working in corporate finance, as I mentioned, also really passionate about personal development, I had met with some amazing mentors and coaches who were incredible guides during this transitional phase for me. And what I realized was that my true purpose, my true passion in life is to really help others understand the power of manifestation to create their own reality, but have the tools and the strategies financially to back that up. And so it didn't happen overnight. It was definitely a journey to kind of piece all those parts of the puzzle together. But what that became was the Witch of Wall Street, where we very much bridge, you know, the spirituality, the manifestation, the mindset work with the very grounded, rooted strategy side of personal finance. How do you manage your money? How do you invest it and make it work for you?
Wow, that's really profound what you said as well. And I wanted to ask, was it kind of that, do you think it's more that the situation at work just changed, or it became like less appealing to you in a sense, or a bit of both?
I think I manifested it, to be honest. Like, I'm very clear that everything that is happening in our life, we are manifesting it, whether it's the things that we want or the things that we don't think we want. And so even though in the moment, like things had changed quite dramatically for me in my career, and it wasn't just a different perspective, it was like new leadership, a new team all of a sudden. Looking back, it's very clear that I had to manifest that situation, like the universe or God or whatever you connect with, like almost put their foot in between and was like, all right, enough. You have a bigger vision to go and pursue. You have something bigger to go do. Like, you have this vision, now enough playing around with it, go pursue it. And so I definitely created that turbulence for myself, not intentionally, not consciously, of course. I didn't orchestrate it, but I very much understand looking backwards that, you know, that had to happen because I have never felt more aligned with the work I do today. Whereas I know the work I was doing in my 20s, as exciting as it was very ego driven. It was what I thought success looked like. And that's what growing up I was told to do in order to be successful in life.
Okay, nice. Can I just imagine orchestrating that like a pure puppet master behind the scenes?
No, I didn't tell this new boss
Solid
to
chaos.
be horrible.
Yeah. So let's go on now to kind of your personal finance journey, what you've learned and how it's inspired you to teach others. So we'll start with some of the biggest misconceptions, either misconceptions that you had or misconceptions that the people you help now have. What are they?
That managing your money is not that important, that you don't really need to budget your money. I think there's a big concept or perception that budgeting is really boring, and I actually really agree with it. It's why I don't budget in the traditional sense myself. I use a different type of method, which just allows you to put your money into buckets in different accounts, and then you can go and you spend your money and you don't have to be fact checking against some spreadsheet, which I just think sounds atrocious to live by. So budgeting is boring. Yes, it's true. Find an alternative, which I have. The other one that's really big though is that investing is not for the majority of people. And I definitely grew up thinking this, and I very much resonate with people when they say this, that investing is just for the ultra rich. It's for people who come from that kind of background or that kind of family. And I certainly didn't come from either. Like, my family were good, like we were fine, but we certainly weren't wealthy. No one in my family was investing. They just thought it was just like insane. Like, just the idea of investing was just so far-fetched. And I know if that's something that I had, like, I know there's so many women who share that belief right now. Something else that tends to follow along, more so obviously with the women that I work with, is that it's very male dominated and it's a very masculine thing to do, and they can find that really off-putting. And the reality is that yes, the financial industry is very male dominated, but I don't think investing is a very masculine thing. I don't think it's like, it's just for men, or it's a very or just a masculine energy practice. I think it's a very feminine energy actually, and not male, female, but just in the terms of energies themselves. People think how cool to be able to invest your money, let it go to work for you, and you get paid no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't need to work for it anymore. That your money is actually taking care of you. And I think that's just such an incredible position to be able to put yourself in and to give you that gift of actual financial freedom. And I think a lot of people just think it's a buzzword, financial freedom, that it's not really achievable, that they have to work really hard to get there. And they don't, that there's so many alternative routes. They just have to be smart with how they're managing their money. And that's actually one of the biggest things I see, is that people think it's how much they make determines whether they'll be wealthy or not. And it's not. It's never how much you make, it's how much you keep. And so many people have got caught in these spending cycles, unintentional spending, to try and keep up the Joneses or what's happening on social media or some latest trends. And they don't think that they have enough to start. They don't think that putting away $100, €100 is enough or worthwhile to even get started. And they couldn't be more wrong. You know, getting started, knowing that time more than anything, time even more than the amount of money you're investing, is your biggest friend, your biggest superpower when it comes to building financial freedom and really building wealth. So there are a couple. It's a long list though.
No, that's good. Yeah. Another one, you talked about this in one of your videos. You talked about how some people think like investing is like gambling. And I think that's a myth I had somewhat growing up, because I thought, investing equals trading, and trading means waking up at 6 a.m. looking at the market news and, being active on whatever platform to make moves. It was only when I really learned about dividend investing, which was where I started, and then progressed later on to index funds and stuff like that, when I really realized, this is actually pretty, just set it up on autopilot and let it do the work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, you're absolutely right. They think it's gambling. I still hear this all the time. Isn't it really, really risky? And I'm please understand, the money you have sitting in your bank account right now in a regular savings account, that is more risky for you than you ever putting your money investing. And I know that might sound a little bit ludicrous, but if you just have all of your money sitting in just a regular savings account or in your bank account, you can be guaranteed it's going to lose money next year, because inflation is high and everything's getting more expensive. And if your money is sitting there and it's not earning money, you're guaranteed to be losing your purchasing power. The value of that money is going down. If you're investing, and no, we're not talking about day trading or betting on what the movements of the markets are going to be, things like you mentioned, like index funds, ETFs. If you're investing for the long term, you can know that your money will be growing over time, and you're not guaranteed to lose money like you are when it's sitting in a savings account or a bank account. So it's very, very the furthest thing from gambling. It's you're not going to Vegas. You're literally putting your money to work for you for 10, 20 years. It's good.
Yeah. And so is that your strategy when it comes to investing, like ETFs, index funds, these kind of things? Or do you have other investments and approaches that you take?
Yeah, so the strategies that I teach, it's very much long-term investing. It's very diversified. It's very low risk. Look, there's a risk involved with everything, as there is if you walk out the door, you could get knocked down by a car. If you get on a plane, anything can happen. But we really look at managing that risk as best as possible. And ETFs, index funds, history shows that they are the best investment option for the majority of people, because they're so diversified. You're not just investing in one company, which you have the risk of losing your entire investment. You're spreading it out across hundreds or thousands of companies. You are so diversified. You're spreading that risk so massively. And so for the long term, it's one of the best strategies that you can use. I know there's a lot of talk, people on social media, especially nowadays, like TikTok and Instagram, they're doing the reels on you should have bought into this one specific company and you could have made this amount of money back. And it's to be able to get in so early to these specific companies is such a unique skill, and so much of it is luck. Because if you think about it, you're up against massive investment institutions who have the best of technology and thousands of analysts researching companies, listening to the latest board reports, in contact with companies and getting all the latest information, and they're placing bets and they're placing investments in these companies. The average investor who just wants their money to work for them and they want to go about the day, do their day job, spend time with their friends and family, go travel, the amount of work it would require for them to be able to get in and buy a stock at the right time and then know when to sell the stock at the right time it's so limited and it's so risky. And of course it can pay off, just like you can go to Vegas and it can pay off, but most times over the long term, it just won't. And so I very much don't advise going down that route. Like if you want to have some fun money and invest in a couple of individual stocks, cool, go do that. But just don't bank your future on it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at things. Let's come back to what you said about budgeting. So you think budgeting is boring and you have a different system. And as soon as you said that, it made me think of like Ramit Sethi and kind of the rich life philosophy. And I've heard you talk about it kind of on some of your videos, and you've mentioned it at the start. Define what is a rich life.
I mean, for me, my rich life is having financial freedom, where my money is working for me enough that if I decided tomorrow and everyone to do another thing, that my investments are making me enough money to live, right? That's ultimately what financial freedom is. You can wake up in the morning, decide whatever you want to do. You have money working for you in the background. Extending beyond that, it's, doing what you want with who you want when you want. So having that time with your friends, your family, being able to travel, do the things that really light you up. But I have a rich life mastermind where I bring women together and we go through this whole journey. But a rich life is defined differently by everyone, because what is right for you and what you value and what brings you joy and what enriches your life won't be the same as what it is for me. Like I've always believed like financial freedom is at the crux of it. It's like the foundation. But what you layer on top of that cake of richness in your life, it's going to be different. We have different tastes and preferences. So it's exciting because it varies, and there is no one narrow definition. We get to decide what that looks like.
Yeah, you mentioned just now like the traditional definition, but I've definitely had kind of the debate with other guests, and I myself like drew my own conclusion that financial freedom isn't like tied down solely to my investments make enough money. It can also be like, I'm doing my own thing and I choose when I work. I make my money from this source, that source, wherever, and that allows me to live, travel, do whatever I want. So I think beyond the traditional definition, like it can be quite flexible.
Yeah, of course. If you have a YouTube channel that's making you money off videos that you've made a year ago, like sweet. You're not tied to having to be at a desk or having to turn up or else you don't make money, right? That's like the true sense of financial freedom. But financial freedom differs for everyone because everyone's desires are different. So their costs of living will be different and the things they want to do will be different. So that number will it will vary for each person.
Yeah. And what obstacles do you think people face, and especially women, since that's kind of who your education is aimed at, face when it comes to investing, building a rich life, and what can you tell them to help them overcome those obstacles?
I mean, it's some of the misconceptions are very closely linked when it comes to the obstacles, because women make great investors, and I wish I could put this on a billboard, because despite women often being called very emotional, they're actually very non-emotional investors. They're more likely to just invest and leave their money there and move on with their life and not buy and sell so much. So that's why, not that we're in a game of comparing, but it's why women tend to be slightly better investors. They have slightly higher returns just because they don't have the same preference to trade as much. But in terms of obstacles, the biggest one is in the mind first, right? It's even just having that awareness that, investing is for me. It's what I hope to do with my platform, is like bring awareness, like investing is available for you. It's for you, no matter what background you came from, no matter how much you were earning, no matter how you identify, like whatever is going on, what are the labels you've put on yourself, like investing is for everyone. So that awareness piece is the biggest thing. And then the second piece is like the mindset, even just having the psychology of, I want to start investing. I need to get educated on it. And then I need to know how I'm going to stay in the investing game for the long term and succeed at that. So, when it comes to investing, when it comes to what I teach and all of our educational programs, like the strategy, of course, everyone needs to know what to do and how to manage risk and all these different things, all these different principles, which we cover. But we also cover a big piece on psychology, because I'm sure you've heard it, like 80-90% of success is psychology, the rest is strategy. And so if we just show you the strategy, what's going to happen right now when the US stock market's down? Are you going to freak out? Are you going to look at the news and be like, I need to sell, right? And you're going to lose your money. Like, do you have the right psychology for investing? Do you have the right mindset for managing your money so that you're not investing too early and you've actually got your finances in place? So yeah, awareness and then having the right mindset would probably be the two big ones.
Yeah, that's good. I want to come back to what you said about how some people think like investing is not for them. Because I think seeing people in the UK, in the US, like financial education is much more widely spread than it is from my observations in Spain, for example. How about in Ireland? What are your observations with regards to kind of financial education and financial literacy among the population?
Yeah, I mean, no offense to any Irish person who's listening who's like, no, she's wrong. But my experience is it's non-existent. Like, it's amazing. I talked to friends from the US who were like, oh, my grandmother used to started investing for me. And I'm like, that is just so wildly shocking to me, honestly, Johnny, because the idea of my grandmother investing for me is just like, it could not be just crazier of a thought. You know, a woman who raised 12 kids, who had to stay at home, didn't have the choices to go out and work, like just always had just enough to maybe give us a little bit of money here and there. Like, that concept of investing was just so alien. And to be quite honest, like, it's gotten better, like, because of social media, because of YouTube, because of there's like more sharing of information, but still so little awareness. And it's so much more tricky to invest in Ireland. Like, despite being the capital for so many big tech companies and so many big financial firms and like so much money flowing through Ireland, the government has not set it up in a way that investing is actually really accessible for Irish people, which is such a shame. They've made it really quite tricky and complicated investing as an individual, and especially investing for your kids. They've made it so complicated unnecessarily. So when I compare that to the UK, of course, there's still a massive information gap in the UK, but at least the systems are there that makes it easier to take that first step when people get the awareness to want to go and do it.
Yeah, I think that's key as well. Like, when things like an ISA or a 401k in the United States are available, like naturally the information flows a bit more freely and people kind of learn about it. But if you're in a country that doesn't really have some of those financial vehicles, then it kind of... You have to go out there and seek information yourself, and naturally I think not everybody is inclined maybe to do that.
No, most people don't want to sit down and, like, as much as I might love to talk about investing, I mean, not everybody wants to sit down and spend their free time listening to it, right? So, you know, everyone has their own passions and interests, and so there has to be this like real turning point in people's lives or minds where they go, oh crap, I actually should be doing this. That they go, okay, where can I find information? And they might come across a YouTube video or something like that. But then again, that takes time to build trust because it's your money. And can I trust this person I don't know on the internet, what they're telling me? And then you try and go and do it. And it's like, there's so many hurdles at every single point, and it's made to be so complex and nothing seems to be straightforward. And it's a real shame because it is such a powerful vehicle. And me, with my finance background and feeling like I'm very fluent in the language, the lingo, you know, it can still feel overly complex. So for the average person who didn't study finance, who didn't kind of grow up in this world, it can be really, really off-putting, which is a terrible shame.
Yeah, but that's why people like you and many other financial influencers are out there to help people. Yeah, to end that section on a positive note.
Yeah, no, it is. No, it is really good. I suppose it annoys me when I look at some of the systems, like especially in my home country, and I just see how unhelpful they are. And like, they're not adapting with the times. They're not set up to be really supportive for people to start investing. Like, yes, it can work, but when I compare it to the UK and the US, and I know the argument's made, like different population sizes, yes, but you know, if you really care about the well-being of your people in the country and your citizens, then wouldn't financial freedom and giving them that financial support to be able to go do it themselves, like, shouldn't that be at the forefront? And unfortunately, it just isn't. But yes, there's people like myself who can teach others how to do this, and at least they can make the very best of the situation. So yeah, we'll end it on a high note.
Yeah, great. Okay. So on to the next part of the episode, Laura. We're going to look a bit more at kind of your entrepreneurial journey now. So we mentioned The Witch of Wall Street. So where did the name come from and how was it born?
So I was in a mastermind and we were talking through what this name of the business would be. And I was asked to describe, okay, so what exactly do you do? And I was like, well, it's going to be like manifestation and mindset, like the kind of more woo side of things, but really grounded in science and like logic and really understanding how things work. But then I want to mix in like the strategy of investing and finance and like the kind of more Wall Street side of things. And someone was like, well, aren't you kind of like the Witch of Wall Street then? And I was like, yeah, true. And I just kind of sat with the name for about a day. And then I was like, I actually love that name. And it's kind of perfectly Marmite because people who love it really love it. And they're like, oh, that is my community. I want to learn how to invest. I want to do all the money stuff. But I also want to know how I work on my mindset. And I want to talk about manifestation and energy and the really cool stuff that goes on in the universe of how we manipulate the world around us to create the reality that we want. Like those people are going to be like magnetized to the Witch of Wall Street. And then there'll be people who are like, ew, gross witch. What is that? That's some hocus pocus BS, like not for me. And that's okay, because if they came into one of my programs and I started talking about manifestation, and if it wasn't for them, they'd never have enjoyed it anyway. So it's a good kind of Marmite name for me.
Yeah, it's a nice quick filter already at the start before someone's even clicked on your channel or program or whatever. Yeah, they know what to expect. Yeah. And so what is the thing that you're most proud of that you've been able to achieve with the Witch of Wall Street since starting?
It's actually a great question, because if we were talking just about my corporate days, I think it would have been accolades and all these different things I had done. But in my business, it's genuinely the messages I receive, the testimonials, speaking to women like a year later and just still hearing the transformation that the work we've done together has made in their lives. And the thing I love and I try and highlight a lot is that when we talk about money, Johnny, it's like, it's not just in the context of money. It's like money doesn't fit in one singular box in your life and then that's it. Money is this thing that we're in a relationship with, but it impacts every single other aspect of our life, from our health, from our own personal relationships, marriages, from the opportunities we say yes to, our career, business, everything. And so I've received so many messages even of like, having gone through this, like it saved my marriage because we weren't talking about money and now we are, and we found these things and we're dealing with them. Or from women who, they had, like one woman recently just messaged me, she had just started her business, her partner was to be supporting her, something happened that we won't go into details of, but then all of a sudden she was on her own, and if she hadn't been managing her finances and investing her money, she really would have been in a very bad situation. And so these are the messages that I receive like months and even years after I work with these women and it comes to an end, and they're still saying it has changed things so fundamentally for me. And it's not that I take this from like, oh, I'm so amazing, I've changed their lives. It's like, no, I've provided them with this journey to go on so that they've been able to empower themselves and inform themselves so that they've been able to change their own lives. Like they've done the work and now they're able to like experience the benefits of it. But those moments, those messages and those testimonials are like what I live for. Like having that impact in people's lives is why I don't think I'll ever retire. Like I just love it so much.
Yeah. I think it's honestly the best thing from like my journey as well. Like obviously it's great if you've got your own business, you're making money from it, you've got your freedom kind of thing. But ultimately they're all byproducts of the fact that you provide value to people and you help people.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you do that and keep that kind of the center of what you do, then everything else will just kind of happen naturally.
I think
That's
so.
what I've concluded, yeah.
Yeah, because impact has always been such a massive thing for me. And if it was money I was after, I would have just stayed in my finance job. I would have ended up in private equity, and like the Witch of Wall Street would never have existed. So I know starting a business has to be driven, in my opinion at least, by something bigger, by a desire to make some kind of impact. And I think that's especially like connecting to that why. And having your own business too, Johnny, like it's not a straight line. Like there's ups, there's downs, there's like detours, there's all sorts of things that happen when you're growing your business. But having that like connection to that why, a strong enough why, a reason, like why are you in your business? And impact is such a big one for me. Like it keeps you going, it keeps you steady, it keeps you turning up, even in those challenging times.
Yeah. Is there anything you do miss about kind of the the corporate world from when you were working in it? Or are there any challenges that you regularly face? Like when you talk about like it's not a straight line with the business?
Yeah, like I was very grateful because, when I started my career, I had a very average job. I was working in corporate finance in Dublin at a big four company, but it was like just a normal finance job, nothing particularly spectacular. And then I had invested in this really just transformational program to learn about the science of manifestation and law of attraction. And that really took a pivotal point in my life. And so the next phase of my finance career was truly remarkable. And I really loved it until I didn't. And that story I shared earlier of like, I was 4 weeks into it and then I was done. But for the years that it worked, it was extraordinary. And I got to travel to some of the most incredible places in the world. I got to work with some of the most brilliant people, do work that was really making a big impact with companies. I also got to take part in lots of really big charitable organizations. Like I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, I trekked across the Sahara Desert, raising funds for kids' charities. And then I was able to go and present, to these charities and meet these kids that were having a big impact on. That kind of work made a big difference to me. So I was kind of living this very fabulous lifestyle funded by the company, doing work that was really exciting and also having a really big impact and being paid really nicely for it too. So, a lot of people talk about they left their corporate careers, they didn't like it. But I was very blessed that for when it worked well, it worked incredibly well until it didn't. And then I left and then that was enough. So I don't really believe in complaining. Like when I hear people complain about being in their jobs and things, I'm like, you're making a choice to be there. So either make the best of it or make a different decision. And again, having the financial cushion to allow you to do that is a big piece, because I know a lot of people are living in financial vulnerability where if they lose their job, they can't pay their bills next month. And that's a place where you can't have a negotiating power. You can't negotiate a higher salary. You can't take a break from your work and go find a better job. So I do understand the sensitivities of it, but there was definitely a lot of parts of my career that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And now that you're kind of freelancing, you got your own business, we'll say. Have you ever thought about like a digital nomad kind of life or relocating? I guess we kind of talked about it in the intro. Yeah, you're potentially looking at coming to Spain a little bit, but any thoughts on relocating?
Yeah, it's an interesting one actually, because I think there's so much of your growing up when you're like, I just want freedom in life. And then, I moved to London obviously to continue my career in finance, and that was really exciting. But when I started my own business, then I had the ultimate freedom. And it really poses an interesting question of now what do you want to do? And it's a very strange place to be, to have complete freedom. And there's no what are those things in the bowling park when they put up the little barriers at the side? But there's none of those on your life anymore. It's not like, oh, I need to be here because of work, or I need to be here because of something else. Like my family all live in different countries. Like my work can technically be anywhere. So it's an interesting question to ponder, but having the freedom to travel is definitely very appealing. And yes, Spain is definitely looking very compelling. So maybe I'll be moving closer to your part of the world soon.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, it's the place to be right now. Like just the weather and the lifestyle in Spain. Yeah, it's unmatched. I mean, there's places that compare, but Spain, it has its je ne sais quoi about it.
Whatever the Spanish version of that is.
Yeah. Anyways, on the topic of your business, Ireland is obviously, like you said, it's the home of a lot of big corporations because they have very beneficial taxation and business regulation here. Do you find the same also applies for small businesses and entrepreneurs?
In Ireland, you got me. I don't really know. I never had my business in Ireland. But I would imagine if you have a business of any size, you still benefit from the very low corporation tax. It certainly probably is more tax efficient than being an employee, where tax rates are super high. So I'd imagine there's still a lot of benefits. I don't know if there's any particular perks, or I don't know if the enterprise board is doing anything particular in Ireland to help small businesses. I established my company in the UK, so that's my only experience of starting the company.
Yeah, because I mean, there are people that establish like UK limited companies. There's people that go as far as like setting up like, UAE companies or use like US LLCs for like tax optimization. So yeah, interesting that you didn't choose Ireland for your setup. Was it because of like you were based in the UK when you set it up?
Yeah, I was living in London when I set it up, so it just felt like the normal thing to do. So that was the very basic reason for doing it in the UK.
Okay,
Yeah.
very interesting. Cool. Well, Laura, it's been a great interview. Thank you for your time. We always finish on a fun question with my guests, personalized to them. And so your fun question is either in your corporate days or like in your current era, what is the most outrageous thing that you've purchased and was it worth it?
Yes. So it was definitely, when was I? 2015, I took out a loan to go 15,000 euro loan when I was making 40K or something as a newbie chartered accountant, to travel to Toronto to go work with the men that I had attended a 3-day seminar with online, trusting that it would change my life. And it actually did.
Oh, wow.
So I came back and within the year I had the loan paid off. I had like tripled my salary. It was really extraordinary the things that had happened from that. So totally outrageous purchase. My whole family thought I was insane for doing it. Definitely got a lot of weird looks from people, but I just trusted that if I invest in myself, it will come back tenfold, and it certainly did.
Would you do it again if you had to?
Do you know what's interesting? Because now that I'm like so cognizant of being in debt and managing your money differently, I don't know if I would put myself into debt again. I don't know if it's a very financially savvy move to make, to be quite honest. But I think at that stage in my life where I had so little, the career I was in, newbie chartered accountant, not getting paid that much, I didn't really have a lot of money, and I didn't know where my career was going to go next. It felt like a risk worth taking, and so I did, but I would never go back and change it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. All right. So Laura, thank you again for your time. And with that, we'll wrap up the episode.
Awesome, Jenny. Thank you so much.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, guys, and found it helpful and interesting. Remember, if you'd like to support the podcast and the work that Millennials with Money does, then you can do so by becoming a channel member on YouTube or by becoming a Patreon. And in return, you'll get access to a range of exclusive content and rewards as a thank you for your support. And with that said, guys, till next time, I'll see you on the next one. And let's get this money.